Welcome to UC Summit. My name's David Dungay. I have with me today Mark Needham from Cisco. Welcome to the show, Mark. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me, David. Happy New Year.
Yes, you too. So, Mark, today's session is called the Journey to the Hybrid Workplace, a very, very relevant topic in today's environment. But before we get into that, can you give our audience a little bit of an oversight on who you are, your position, and Cisco?
Yeah, sure. So Cisco's the kind of leading collaboration vendor globally, has been for a very long time. We cover everything from meeting rooms to contact center, cloud calling, on-prem calling, WebEx software, everything needed to allow people to do their entire jobs from wherever they may be in the world, in the office, at home, or on the go. Me personally, I'm the EMEA hybrid workplace lead. So I'm part of the EMEA collaboration leadership team focused on the sales and strategy, kind of as we go to market with this highly relevant topic, based on what's been going on in the last year or so.
Yeah. So, Mark, we're talking. It's January 2021. In the title of this session, "Journey to the Hybrid Workplace." A lot of people might think, we're already here. We've had mass scale remote working for best part of a year now, and what does that mean? Exactly, what does hybrid workplace mean or workspace mean to you exactly?
Yeah, sure. So I think there's a couple key elements where this is a little bit different from what people have experienced in the past. So I think the first way to think about it is view it as the next wave of workplace transformation. So you think about the 70s and the 80s, everybody was in these dreary cubicle-based offices, just there for head down solo work. Then we moved to agile workplace design. I'm sure our offices have been. I'm sure many of your offices are as well. Kind of open plan, activity based design, far more engaging and nicer places to be. So as you go into kind of hybrid workspace, what a hybrid workspace is, it's all about the individual autonomy to choose where you work and how you go about your job, be that in an office, at home, or somewhere in between. And for you as an individual to have the autonomy to choose how you can be the best version of yourself for your employer and the best version of yourself for what you need to do with your home, with your family life, and so forth. And commonly, when we talk about this with customers, sometimes the first response is similar to your question: isn't it just the same as flexible working? And that's not the case at all. There's really four kind of critical distinctions between flexible working and hybrid working. So if you think about it, flexible working has always been available to a limited portion of the workforce. Hybrid working is about scale. It's every employee having the opportunity to work this way rather than it being an exception. Also, when you think about flexible working, it's always been very structured. You can work from home on a specific day, and those days are for a specific task. For years and years, many companies I worked at, your flexible working day was Friday, for example. Where in a hybrid workplace, employees choose when they're going to work from home, how they're going to go about work from home, so they can really focus on the outcomes they're trying to achieve. Also, flexible working isn't actually very flexible. It's very much an either or. You're either in the office or you're at home. That's it. Where with hybrid working, it's the autonomy to choose where you're going to work, when you work, which I've got to admit for me personally is hugely important. So I'm balancing the children, the homeschooling. I'm also a terrible morning person. So it allows you to find your natural rhythm based on all the demands on your time so you can be as successful as possible at every aspect. And it's all about how you get your work done. Everyone is free to define their own process, what tasks they find they can do better at home to what they can do in an office. And the final big distinction is flexible working is very time orientated. It's still that kind of 9 to 5. You're working in your usual office hours from your home. Where when you move to true hybrid working culture, it's all about the results. So you may have some long days, you may have some short days, you may work a 9 to 5 some days, but it doesn't actually matter. All that matters is achieving the outcomes you're trying to do for your organization. So that's the real key distinctions between kind of flexible working and hybrid working. And that's kind of why we're not already there. There's still things and processes and things that need to be done to allow people to thrive post-COVID. And hybrid working is the key element of that.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about some of those challenges now. I think everyone in the UK at the moment is probably thinking this. We've just gone into our third lockdown now, and it is a juggling act. And this approach to work is, it's going to be a savior for many people. It is certainly for me as well. So let's talk about some of those barriers for businesses trying to go down this route. For the long term, what are they, and how can we sort of help them overcome those challenges?
Yes, so I think there's a mixture of soft and hard kind of barriers to organizations being able to benefit from this. So I think the most obvious one is that many are still kind of shackled by legacy technology investments, or they bought tools in a rush as the first lockdown landed, and they may have been using consumer tools or tools with weak security credentials. And at that point in time, that was exactly the right thing to do. You just needed to grab anything you could to ensure your staff could still be productive. But now we know this is going to be more of a long-term thing. It's now about having a considered strategic, making those considered strategic decisions about how to plan your requirements for the longer term. So what you need there are an experience that can support your employees when they're at home, when they're at the office, and when they're in between. And that experience needs to be consistent regardless of where they may be, because that drives up the adoption. It makes it easier to kind of ebb and flow across your day, which is really important. Now, I suppose another barrier we've seen is that when organizations initially, and rightly so, thought about their own employees. How do we get our internal teams collaborating or meeting in the first instance? Um, and that was what was happening in March. But when you look at the need now to do your entire job from pretty much any location, very few people's entire job only relates to working with somebody, other people within the organization. So they need those same rich collaborative abilities that they have internally, but in a secure way to be used with external stakeholders, be that customers, consultants, partners, providers, whatever it may be. And actually, Cisco is the only one that can provide that in a really secure fashion, where IT have total visibility into how the technology is being used, how it's being deployed to ensure your compliance and all your regulations are met. So that's a huge one. Another one I hear commonly on the softer side is, and I've seen this with some of my friends and family, is the ideology of their employees. So they have this kind of still, even taking into account what we've gone through in the last 8, 9 months, they still have this habitual legacy style working in their mind, which they think they're going to do when people come back to the office. But everything's going to be so different. That's not going to be the case at all. And I think the employers need to be really honest with themselves about, of all these old processes we have, how many of these actually have to be done in an office? And also consult with their employees to feel which of those tasks they feel they can adequately do at home or in other locations, so they can find that perfect mix for hybrid working. And the perfect mix for hybrid working will vary from organization to organization, from location to location, but it's about that consultation, and about ignoring what's gone in the past in some respects, thinking with an open mind about, we've had this massive unfreezing of our processes, so let's really look at what we need for the future rather than looking at what we've needed from the past. We've seen that how some organizations have tried to go about that is this creation of kind of a new role, commonly called like an employee experience director, who has a more holistic responsibility to help make these kind of decisions and take fresh eyes to the current problems.
That's interesting. I mean, let's go into that a little bit more. The employee experience director, where does that sit in the organisation? What the primary function of that sort of new role we're hearing about.
Well, commonly, it's a really great question, and the linguistics of the specifics of the role may change from organisation to organisation. But ultimately, this is somebody at the C-suite that has an overarching responsibility that spans IT, HR, and facilities. And the reason why this role exists is those three teams are superb at their particular areas. IT are fantastic at technology, HR are great with people, and facilities are great at creating and managing physical workspaces. But when you move into this hybrid working world, you need to kind of break down silo decision making, because a corner you make up, for example, on the IT side, could be an inhibitor to something HR want to do. and that could then block something facilities want to do. So you need to look across all of them, and rather than thinking about where can we trim a bit of capex here and there, think about the total solution, the total impact of that solution, the positives, the total cost of the ownership of that solution, and have that broader view on where it drives cost savings, where you get productivity gains, where you get greater agility, and where it impacts employee engagement. And the sum of those parts is how you get your employees to thrive in a new world and get the dramatic benefits that can come from hybrid working. But if you're making this piecemeal decisions, it can be that much harder. And that's why we start seeing more of these roles that have a wider span of authority to bring those elements together.
Yeah, I mean that's a really, really, really crucial role for a lot of organisations. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see, how that role possibly develops in the future as well. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about these dispersed workplaces we're seeing at the moment. Are we leaving ourselves vulnerable, or are these businesses leaving themselves vulnerable by having such a dispersed workplace?
So I think so Cisco is obviously a very large organization, but it was a comment made by one of our IT team on one of our internal calls, that they've gone from managing 200 offices to 70,000 offices. So clearly that comes with challenges. And yes, we are a very large organization, but the same challenges can chunk up or down. So you could have 50 staff and one office, and now you're managing 50 home offices. Or you could be an organization that's even larger than Cisco, and it makes it even more complicated. So the way you kind of manage this vulnerability is, there's a couple key areas we'd highlight. Firstly, to enable IT to support that greater dispersion of a workforce, they need everything managed via a single platform. So a single management platform for all the technology, the software and hardware in the office and at home, and the on-the-go experience. So we have something we call Control Hub, where you can manage your cloud calling experience, your on-prem calling, your video endpoints, your deployments, your onboarding, your phones, your headsets. Everything can be managed remotely via the Control Hub, which makes it far, far easier for the IT teams to manage this hugely dispersed workforce now without bringing risk onto the organization. And that same kind of management portal is where you can track your adoption, where you can see how the technology has been adopted. Sorry, but how the engagement you're getting to make sure you're getting the value you hope for. That's where you apply your security and your compliance, and you can do it once and apply it to many people. And that's where you can troubleshoot at scale as well. So it could be someone's got a local problem. It could be it's the hardware. It could be it's the software. It could be something totally different. But how do you be able to get that wider visibility across that huge footprint compared to what would have been a smaller footprint in the past? So that's a really important one. The other one is, as you do with every crisis, you see lots of people with malicious intent try to take advantage of it. So you need to be using a platform that has enterprise grade security that's built into it, not bolted on. And there have been other vendors in this space that have been particularly exposed because they've had a kind of slapdash approach to this. And they have done remediation work, and the analysts are still highlighting their platform as deficient compared to some of the other ones. Cisco, on the other hand, we are one of the largest security vendors in the world. So not only do we have the deepest integrations possible with the overarching security bubble that wraps everything that happens in an organization, not just collaboration, but everything we learn from those other parts of our business, we apply it into the foundations of our collaboration platform, WebEx, to make it as secure as possible. And that's why you see things like the Queen of England using WebEx and our video endpoints for her calls, because security is such of a priority to them. So when you do those things together, it allows you to service many from less resource, and also it takes less of the administrative headaches and concerns away, because you're just in a much tighter bubble to start with, without it being an inhibitor to your employee experience.
Yeah.
Another one that's
Okay.
quite interesting at the moment as well, there's lots of articles around kind of data privacy, and our CEO often talks about Cisco. One of Cisco's values is that we see data privacy as a human right. But where customers have used those kind of more consumer-like tools, they actually are significantly exposed to those vendors misusing your data. And they use your data to drive their revenue. They use it to sell advertising. They use it for third-party marketing, or that data could be used for more malicious purposes. And it's some quite interesting insights. You can go to the Apple App Store, for example, and it lists all the data your vendors capture from you. And you'll see from that how WebEx compares to other solutions in this space. And it's something that's really important to take into account because everyone's really concerned about this now in their home lives as well as at work.
So, Mark, what does that mean from a collaboration perspective?
So if you think about, I mentioned, look, we've just moved to a new office in Chicago. Other vendors are doing that as well. When you look about at how the intelligent adaptations we're making to the offices, there are a few key things that need to come into play. So within the office, you're actually going to need more collaboration spaces because people are not going to an office to do head down work. They're only going there to socially collaborate and interact with others. You need more and different types of spaces. So you need less of the kind of individual workspaces and different types of desks, which allow you to do more collaboration around them. And when people go into the office, it's the move away from kind of formal meetings to more informal settings. So one of the things we're rolling out currently is the concept of what we call a grand community lounge. So think of these as a kind of informal workspace, kind of that fuses the best of a WeWork and the kind of similar organizations as that, alongside the experience you get at a business class lounge in an airport. So you're only in the office to meet and bump into others. So you need to collaborate with them in a safe way, be that between 2 people, 4 people, 6 people. And even these open plan informal collaborative spaces need to have access to that same ubiquitous experience that you get when you're working at home, when you're in a traditional meeting room, and ever in between. So that's really kind of a key element because I don't think we see a time in the near to medium term where you'll ever be having a meeting without anybody coming in remotely. So you're going to need video in every single one of these collaboration spaces to allow your organizations to function and thrive. And people are very comfortable with that now because they've been living on video since March this year, March last year now, as you now into 2021.
Yeah, so you raised an interesting point there, Mark. About our meetings in the future in the physical office. They are very likely to include remote workers. Beaming themselves in on video. Just a quick question though: how do businesses address this concept? I'm hearing more and more about creating silos within their organisation between the home workers and people who are in the office. Is there a danger there of creating maybe a bit of a second class citizen in the office for those people at home, or can that work?
I think it definitely can work. It's definitely an area where the technology is a key enabler. So we attended an event, and there was an academic from LSE, and she was talking about this concept of digital serendipity. And kind of really what she's getting towards is, yes, everyone loves the coffee chat about they bump into somebody, what about this, what's going on? But there's actually no reason why you can't do that when you're at home. So quickly ping somebody a message, give somebody a call, jump on a video chat with them. Your life doesn't need to be revolve around fixed, dedicated meetings. So yesterday, one of my colleagues I needed to speak to about something. It's not a case of when can I schedule a meeting with you for half an hour. It's like, have you got 2 ticks? Yes, I have. Boom. Right, let's have a conversation. And then we move that forward without having to wait. So in exactly the same way as you just have that casual bumping into somebody when you're in an office, you can still have that when you're more dispersed and it's still over video and it's still just as rich. And to be honest, it may even be more time efficient because you're not then going to spend half an hour talking about other topics. You're just getting what you need to fuse an idea, to ideate, to move it forwards. And that's why these kind of single collaboration platforms are really important. So you can quickly make contacts to somebody. You can escalate that from a message to a phone call to a one-to-one video meeting. Or if they say, oh, let's ask so-and-so, you can bring them in and make it a fully fledged video meeting. So it's just about it becoming more of a natural flow, which some people who've always worked in an office will find that quite tricky. But those which have had are more mature in their experience, that they've worked from home for longer, find that much easier. And I definitely feel for people that have been a bit shocked by you now work at home. So it was just over 10 years ago when I first got a job where I would work from home the majority of the time. And initially I hated it. We had really poor technology. It was unengaging. I felt that distance. But then, so I've been at Cisco now for 6 years, and I couldn't go back to an office again 5 days a week. I get to do just as much ideation, just as much brainstorming, just as much anecdotal conversation with people. I can go into the office when I want. I get to see more of my children, and it's just a really blended way of working, which is different to what many people had in the past. But you just, when you fully embrace it, and if you're empowered with the right technology, which is why that kind of employee experience director role, or somebody that looks across IT, HR, and facilities to look at a holistic solution, comes into play to drive that maximum value for gains for the employer and gains for the employee.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was gonna ask you there. Rewind 5, 10 years. Security wasn't at the forefront of a lot of business leaders' minds. For those that it was on their list of priorities. Quite often it was just a tick in the box sort of exercise. Security, oh, done. How many people are still treating it in this day and age as a that sort of bolt on to whatever they've got? Tick the box, move on. Are you still seeing that mentality, or has that switch really changed now, and people are taking it seriously enough?
I think it's a really interesting question, and one that has kind of multiple answers. So when you look at, there's obviously many industry surveys about what are the top concerns of the C-suite, and whenever you look at these surveys, security always comes near the top. But then sometimes I think what you see is organisations that aren't necessarily always practicing it, even though their security officers saying you need to do ABC, but they don't necessarily do that. I think actually one example is there was actually early on in the COVID period, the Ministry of Defence in the UK banned certain tools from certain platforms from the government using because it was because of due to security concerns. But then even post it being banned, other aspects of the government still use the tools which the Ministry of Defence and other parts of the government had defined were not yet secure. So I think it's still something that's in transition, where people, and this is where it's now about making that considered decision. Yes, everybody got sent home. Yes, overnight you had to continue to function. That's been dealt with now. So now everyone's functioning. Many of your employees are finding that they're far more productive at home than they ever thought they would be and really enjoying it. So now, as you make those considered decisions for the long term, security has to be the top concern, and it's something we prioritize in everything we do with our products, even if that has other knock-on effects and other things. But till a product's secure, then we won't release it ourselves, which is just the way we run as a company. And in fact, a little kind of side anecdote I heard way before my time at Cisco, I did hear that one of the companies we acquired, and I won't name who it is, our own IT team wouldn't let us use that company that we just acquired for lots of money until they fixed their security credentials for our own use, let alone before we could even sell it.
Wow.
So it's a top priority for us, and I think when people making a considered decision, they take it into account. But clearly, when COVID hit, it was a firefight. We just need to get something in.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, let's look ahead now. What are your expectations from the physical workspace, the physical office in the future? What's that going to look like?
So I think there's this myth that kind of offices are going to go away, and we're not seeing that at all. Main offices are going to remain hugely important for pretty much every company in the world. Yes, fewer employees may be there day to day, and when they are going to those offices, they're going to use them for different reasons. But for example, we've just finished a new building in Chicago. Apple have taken over the battery power station to be their new HQ, and Facebook have acquired one of the most iconic buildings in New York. So this clearly is still going to be a need for a main office. Um, but I think there is going to need to be changes to the office. So when you look at what the employees care about, 97% want changes to be made to their offices to make them feel safer. And as part of that, 96% want their workplaces to become more intelligent, to give them an experience that's so far beyond what they get at home that it motivates them to leave their home offices. And I think a nice soundbite we heard from one of our customers was that in their view, they felt that the workplace needed to work that much harder to regain employees' trust and motivate them to attend. And there was actually mirrors an article that was in the New York Times this week where they were talking about how an office needs to be thought of as more of a consumer product. Obviously, it needs to fight for people to attend, and if you fight well and listen to your customers, um, you'll get a great experience, and you'll get what you kind of need from that office. So yes, they will be hugely important, but people are not going to be going to the office to do their head down work. They're only going to be going down into the office for their richest collaboration needs, the richest level of social interactions, and that will impact workplace design, and that will impact um, the need to allow them to go to the office but be socially distanced, but they're only going there to collaborate and be in contact with people. So those things need to be fused together.
I mean, those things seem a little bit like they're in conflict, if you like. Going to the office for this rich collaboration experience, yet in a trying to be safe at the same time. How can businesses really like address that? How do they address this need? Is it just a complete office redesign?
No, it's a really question. And I'm sure there will be people which will be phoning organisations and telling them you need to rebuild your entire office and knock it down and do this and do that. But that's not what we're seeing. What we're seeing is that what needs to happen to an office is it's about how you make intelligent accommodations and adaptations based on the new needs. And they really rotate around three areas. Firstly, you need to make the workplace more informative. Secondly, you need to make the workplace more intelligent. And the office is also going to need to become more collaborative. So I can kind of double click into those briefly now.
Okay.
So when we talk about making the workplace more informative, a lot of this is around kind of transparency of communication, to give people the insights they need to have the confidence that when they're in an office, the right things have been put in place to keep them safe. So digital signage going across every bit of glass, be that a video endpoint in a meeting room, be that a piece of glass in a common area. Kind of interactive kiosks to allow you to find your way to meeting rooms in a way that minimizes accidental interaction with others. How you measure the density of the office to ensure that it's within the correct parameters to maintain social distance, and then how you communicate that out to your employees to have that confidence. So you put that onto your digital signage. This office is at 52% capacity. You're free to move around as you choose. Equally, the office could be at 98% capacity. Do you want to go to the building next door, or can you work for somewhere else? May be what they need to communicate. And that can also be done as kind of contextual notifications directly to their apps, directly to WebEx as they walk around the office, as they enter a particular floor, as they arrive at the door, to give people that real-time personalized insights so they know what's going on. For like the IT guys, for the facilities guys, they need more information as well to ensure people are sticking to the rules, to ensure that they're optimizing their footprint as much as possible with these new rules and regulations are in place, because you don't want to waste money, you don't want to put your organization at risk, but so you need data and insights to understand the ebb, the flow, and to help you orchestrate how people move around the office in a way that keeps them safe. So that informative side of things is very much kind of confidence building and looking at your design. When it comes to intelligence, across our portfolio, it's all about sensors, humidity, air, lighting, heating, acoustics. And once you have data points, they can all become triggers for other things that happen in an office. So your smart building integrations, for example, if you've got too much humidity in the office, airborne pathogens spread more easily. So you want to trigger to go to your aircon to bring the humidity to within the correct parameters, as an example. Intelligent wayfinding, so via the app, you know how to get real-time directions which avoid that accidental interaction with other people. The ability to kind of automatically check into room, you just walk in there and it books it out for you without you touching anything, minimizing that risk. And as you leave the room, that becomes available for others. And even in the meeting space, you don't want to actually have to touch anything. So for years, we've had kind of proximity sharing, you've got voice commands, you've got everything needed to run your meeting, make calls, share content, take actions, package and summarize that meeting without having to touch anything that isn't yours to start with. So that intelligence all comes together to give that really rich and safe experience which you cannot get at home, which allows you to bridge kind of those two conflicting challenges of having contact and not having contact at the same time. And you can automate all those things. So that's the role of AI and the rules you can put in place.
Yeah, I mean,
And that's before we even
it's
talk specifically about collaboration.
yeah, yeah. It's a fascinating time for the office, for that physical space, and what those offices are going to look like in the future. Okay, Mark, I think that's a really great place to end today's session. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much, David. Really enjoy speaking to you.
And thank you for watching. You've been watching me, David Dungay, on UC Summit. I'll see you next time.